everyone, and thank you for joining us here on the Recruitment Roundup podcast, which is brought to you by BMS Performance. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, BMS Performance is a specialist sales and marketing recruitment consultancy. For the last 30 years, we've been helping businesses across the UK recruit for vacancies at every level. I'm your host, Mike Leather, and every week I'll be joined by a new guest where we'll get stuck into the latest trends in regards to recruitment. We'll talk about insights, we share ideas, we share experiences, and ultimately we look to provide value to fundamentally help you, whether or not you're a hiring manager, a business leader, or part of an internal talent team, to recruit smarter, faster, and more effectively. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Sophie Mendham. Sophie, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Good. And we're going to dive into today the world of marketing recruitment. But before we do that, Sophie, why don't you give the audience some background on yourself, what got you into recruitment in the first place, and what you do at BMS?
Yeah, sure. So bit about me. So I sit within the marketing recruitment team. So I support hiring managers in finding great marketing talent to join their team. Now, this could be anything in terms of industry-wise across tech, SaaS, events, media, and so on, and anything from the assistant executive level all the way through to sort of like CMO and director level, but also everything in between in terms of the specialist roles such as like SEO content. And my background, I kind of fell into recruitment, and I guess like anybody that you speak to, yeah, everyone kind of falls into it. But my background has always been in sales, so it's very sort of linked up in terms of the skill set there anyway. So whether that's sort of like my background was ed tech, tech sales. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Good. And you've been in for getting on for, I think you're in your third year, aren't you, now?
Yeah, just started my third year. So, exciting times ahead.
So you work on a whole variety of different marketing vacancies. What sort of sectors do you specialise in? Yeah,
so weirdly, and I don't know how it's come about, but I just kind of end up having lots of the events and media businesses come towards me, which I have absolutely no complaint about. I find it really interesting in terms of the different events that are out there targeting different sectors. And so they, I would say, are my personal predominant ones. But as a team, we have lots within sort of the tech, fintech, SaaS, all B2B businesses.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we were really keen to get you on here today, Sophie. Based on your experience, you've been really successful during your time at BMS so far. We wanted to find out from you, what companies can do who are recruiting for marketing vacancies and how they can recruit most effectively as well. So I guess a good starting point for this would be to understand what is happening in the world of marketing recruitment right now. You've mentioned then that you recruit in the tech space. We know the tech space has had its challenges with some redundancies. So a good way to start this from a general overview perspective would be, I guess, what is happening in the world of marketing recruitment in your perspective?
Yeah, so funny you say that. So after sort of like the last 12 months or so, sort of give or take, it's kind of completely flipped. So it's quite refreshing at the moment. If we stick with the events sort of side of the business, with a few of my key clients and key accounts there, it's really refreshing to see them sort of opening up now that sort of like COVID has allowed them to carry on with their events. It's really nice to see them opening up, expanding their teams and their businesses, and sort of seeing that market slowly develop and grow. And as you just said, Mike, in terms of the tech side of things, we are seeing a lot more in terms of the redundancies, and it happens to be within the marketing team that they are just sort of really diminishing them. Really? So you're having a lot of these sort of marketing tech candidates that are now on the market looking for roles as well. But at the same time, we've got a few handful of businesses that are also saying sort of within the tech, fintech, SaaS side of things that are really making a lot of investment into their marketing teams and really seeing the development and going, right, okay, we need to really expand, put the value and the money into the marketing team, and then just soar from there. So as a whole, I'd say marketing recruitment is steady at the moment, and it's at a good pace.
Okay. How with all that you've said there, how sort of candidate driven versus employer driven would you say that the marketing recruitment market is at right now?
Yeah, I'd definitely say it's candidate driven.
Yeah.
Candidates are coming on. I'll speak to somebody, let's say this morning, for example, and then sort of by end of the week, start of next week, they're already off the market.
Really? The life cycle is that fast?
Yeah, really quickly. So there's a few sort of hints and tips I like to give my clients in terms of supporting them in terms of securing that candidate and making things a lot quicker for them if there is somebody that they really like.
Okay, cool. Well, we can definitely come on to those as actionable takeaways. And as I said at the beginning, that was one of the main reasons we wanted to get you on here, to help the audience who are recruiting for marketing vacancies recruit more effectively, equip them with some tips and tricks of how they can fill the roles more quicker. But why don't we discuss why are companies that are finding it hard to fill the vacancies? In your experience, why is that at the moment? Why are companies struggling to fill the marketing roles?
Yeah. Now, none of us really like bringing up the topic of COVID, and I get that it's the sort of like the dreaded C word nowadays, but I do think that had a massive effect in a lot of businesses within their marketing team. Now, as I said earlier, some businesses are sort of still recovering from that. As soon as everything sort of reopened, they did a mass hire, and now they're like, oh, okay, things have eased down now. Actually, we need to take a step back. And it just so happens that the marketing team are the ones that they're making cuts on. You have the other side of the businesses that didn't do that mass hire, and they're now wanting to invest a lot more into the marketing team. So I'd say COVID played a very difficult part within the marketing team and marketing sort of structure within businesses. But sometimes it was sort of like first in, first out. So I feel like some companies and candidates sort of felt like that. I would say that sometimes it's been the misalignment when it comes down to companies, misalignment from what their salary expectations are to what they are asking for in terms of the experience. Now, COVID, 3 years ago now? Yeah. The salary expectations from a candidate that, let's say, had 3 years experience B2B marketing is completely different to what it was then to what it is now. And sort of being at BMS sort of like coming on to 3 years now, it's even I know I can look at a CV now and go, right, okay, I just know what salary they're going to look for. And the jump in it is ridiculous. And I don't think companies are being able to catch up with that change.
Yeah, it's a transition period that the market's gone through, hasn't it? I remember having this conversation with my team 12 months ago, where we were seeing salaries starting to really inflate, and you had companies that were on board with it and they could pay what they needed to attract the talent, but then you had other companies, a lot of the bigger, the corporates who were regimented with their salary bandings, and they weren't able to flex with the pace that they needed to in order to recruit the talent that they were after. There was also internal politics at play because people hadn't had pay rises during COVID, or even people were paid less than the market rate pre-COVID, so they were even in a harder position. And I know certainly in the sales world, the majority of candidates now, they come to us, they want a new role, they're looking for anything between 5 and 10k on top of the basic to move. And from a marketing perspective, what sort of trends are you seeing now in terms of on the candidate side? So when they're coming to you, what are they looking for in order to move? Salary, benefits, working conditions, etc.
Yeah, so I'd definitely say, sort of going on your point there, salary is definitely one of them, and it's the same in terms of, as you just said, Mike, in terms of the amount that they're looking for in terms of the jump. It is, people are looking for around sort of a 10%, if not sort of slightly more in terms of the basic. A lot of the candidates that I'm speaking to invested so much in themselves during the COVID period, taking on different courses, skill sets, learning lots of different things within marketing that they add onto their CV. Now, you and I both know that it doesn't matter how much sort of academy, university degrees, skill sets that you might have on your CV, it looks more in terms of your experience and hands-on, whereas candidates don't always see that. They say, okay, well, I've got this checklist, I want my salary to to represent that as well. Wider benefits, I feel like that has always been one, but this is a lot larger in terms of what I'm seeing with candidates now. And it's not necessarily just the social side and the incentives and after work drinks and dinners, such as mental health is playing a big part. Dental, healthcare. I've spoken to a few candidates now where it's sort of more around pat leave, maternity leave, fertility treatments as well. I've had a few candidates sort of bring that up and ask. Discounted gym memberships, those, and hybrid working is fundamentally sort of up there in the top 3 as well.
Hybrid working's an interesting topic, because there's a lot of companies where, whilst they'll offer hybrid working, they don't offer hybrid working to new starters. They want the new starters sometimes to be in the office 4 or 5 days a week. What have you seen on that particular topic, and like what impact is that having on companies' ability to recruit for their marketing vacancies?
It is a lot harder, and I think that's where it comes down to sort of managing their expectations in terms of the amount of candidates that we are going to be able to send across to them in terms of the CVs, get them interested as well. When you come to sort of new starters, part of me does agree with them. If you are a new starter within the business, actually it's very good to be in the business and be in the office for let's say 4 or 5 days a week for your first month, 2 weeks or so on, and then go down to hybrid working. I do personally see the benefits in that. Whether it needs to be for the whole probation or not, I think that's up for discussion. But we have a few sort of clients here within marketing that are looking strictly 5 days a week that candidates need to be in, and we try to really sort of advise them, look, we're going to struggle to find somebody that wants to do that given the current market. We're helping similar businesses and so on, but it's just what they do as a working policy as a business. So you get the odd candidate that do really, really like it, but I think generations now that have just finished university, that are now coming into sort of their working career, all they have known is either fully remote or hybrid working. I mean, my background, 5 days a week in the London office, and so hybrid working is fairly new to me as well. Whereas candidates now have been brought in going fully remote hybrid working. So to then introduce them to 5 days a week is a bit of a shock to their system, and they think, no, I don't want to. And they see it as a back step probably, rather than something that's progressive. And it's interesting, isn't it, with you saying earlier on that the market is so candidate driven. Sometimes I think when we're recruiting for clients, they don't always appreciate that they're always going up against 100, 200, 300 other employers, and it's not just about how they can be competitive in their own field, but also how can they be competitive to the wider market as well. And if they're up against all these other companies that are offering 2 days, 3 days fully home working, then it might put them at a disadvantage. But this will be an ongoing dialogue, and one that I'm interested to see how it develops over the course of this year, because we are hearing more and more companies talk about having people in the office a little bit more as well. On staying on the candidate side, we've spoken about this on other podcasts, but I'm interested to get your take on it from a marketing perspective. How are marketing candidates going about the job search? Like, what have you seen has changed at all in that over the last 12 months? Quite a lot of them are like hot topic on LinkedIn. That's where I find a lot of candidates there. Now, it used to be, I say used to be, sort of when I first started, it was very hot on the job boards. Those is where I would find really key, outstanding candidates, whereas now it's kind of completely flipped, and a lot of candidates are now using LinkedIn, whether that's to apply or whether that's to sort of change to open to work, and they kind of sit back and wait for recruiter agencies to come to them. Right. I'm finding a lot of graduates or sort of like 6 to 9 months experience within B2B marketing tend to use the job boards rather than LinkedIn, because obviously LinkedIn is where you can sort of lay out all of your experience. You can use the tag words, tag the businesses, and really fill that page out to sort of sell yourself there. Whereas the junior candidates, where it's sort of 6 to 9 months experience, don't necessarily have that just yet. So that's why they lean more towards the job boards.
Right, so it's a real mix still. So you've got a lot of passive candidates, and they tend to be more experienced candidates, people that might be a bit further on in the career, and the more junior candidates are all very much advert led in terms of jobs. So that's interesting. Okay, so I guess if you're a CMO or you're marketing director or head of recruitment for a company that's recruiting marketeers, and you need to be fishing in both ponds, so to speak, don't you? So what would your top 3 pieces of advice be? Like, say I'm a CMO recruiting for marketing vacancies in my team. One's at different levels. I might have a marketing exec, I might have a more senior marketing role, marketing manager, something like that. I'm struggling to fill my vacancies because I'm just not getting through the volume or the caliber of applicants that I need to. What would your top 3 pieces of advice be that you would give to me to ease some of my pain?
First one, I'd just say sell yourself, sell the business in a way that not only that you find engaging, that if you were to, let's say, see your friend and describe, let's say, take BMS, you want to describe it and sell it in such a way that they are going to be hooked and sort of fully invested. Candidates buy into the business rather than the role, the title, and so on. You stay there rather than the role itself. The role is always going to change. You're going to get more responsibilities, less responsibilities. You might get promotions, whereas the business itself, the core values, are going to stay exactly the same. And that's exactly what you want to sell. That would be number one. I'd say that's the most important. Next, I would probably say sort of a quick but thorough interview process. Okay. Again, sort of touched on this previously in terms of it being a very sort of candidate-driven market. As I said, sort of candidates coming in, speak to them on the Monday, and they're off the market by sort of like the following week. So if you can sort of do it in 1 week, put those times in there. Now, when we speak to clients now and we're supporting them with their job search, not their job search, their candidate search, I will get their sort of time slots straight away and say, right, okay, if we're going to support you, I want some time slots in terms of when we can just instantly put candidates in your diary for you to interview. That way, I've got their secure availability. Candidates, we can just pop them straight in their diary as well.
We just press pause just on that point, because that's an important one. I think it requires trust from the client side in you, but and I think this would be a really good topic for our audience to hear about that might not have worked with a recruitment company in that way, and they've already worked in a way where send a CV, then you decide, yes, want to interview that person. What are some of the benefits for a hiring manager employer of giving interview slots up front and trusting recruiters to put the best people in front of them?
So first of all, you're building that rapport straight away. Second point of view is you're taking on board exactly what they've said, which is why I feel like the first point of call that you have with them to understand the business, really drill down, understand the candidate. You're then taking a step out of them for them to sit down, review, let's say 7 CVs that you've sent over, trying to remember, okay, was it Tom that was very good? Was it Sarah? Who had that skill set? And try and make down it's time consuming. They have a job of their own. We can take that weight off of you and be like, right, you said these are your top 5 points. This candidate has it. Pop them in for an interview. Let's catch up the following day to find out how they did. But also, is that the background that you are looking for? Because if it's not, right, let's regroup and find out what is. If it is, brilliant. Let's keep going and finding candidates for you. So I'd definitely say it sort of takes time off of their hands, and we're supporting with that again. It builds that rapport. As I said, we're putting our name out there as it is anyway. We need to back ourselves in terms of finding these great candidates. If we're sending them over and we think that they are suitable for the job, then why shouldn't we be able to sort of pop them straight into their diary?
Yeah, I think as well on this point, and I've always thought from my experience when I was at the on the front line of recruiting for years and years, it means that if you're a hiring manager, you actually get access to the top talent quicker, because you don't have to go through the process, send a CV, wait for some feedback, then have a call to discuss it. You are trusting your recruitment partner, or indeed if you recruit directly, this can still be a great way of reducing the times to hire just by setting interview dates beforehand and saying, so if you work with a HR team, or if it's you that sifts through CVs, as soon as you see someone that comes through that looks, tick a couple of boxes, just book them straight in. It'll make a massive difference. Going back to your point where you said sell yourself, again, this takes me back as well, because I remember where the odd time we'd have a candidate booked in for an interview and they'd say, I've actually looked into the company and I don't want to go for the interview now. I'd often say to the candidate, look, we ask our clients to put their faith in us and trust us about who we put forward to them, in the same way we'd ask you to trust us in who we're going to send you out to see. And that happens so many times where the candidate will come and they'd say, do you know what, I'm made up, I went for that interview. Like, the job seemed okay on paper, but it wasn't really lighting my fire. But after meeting the hiring manager, then I'm absolutely sold on them. So it goes back to what you said, buying into a company and seeing the company and thinking, you know what, these are actually people that I'd want to work for or work with even. What examples have you got on this subject then, of clients of yours, and don't have to name names, of course, but people that do this really well? Because I think it'd be great for the audience to hear some feedback on this, to make them maybe question things that they could do, how they could sell themselves better in the marketing space to recruit marketing talent.
So I've got, obviously won't name names, but I've got a key events business that I support regularly. And sort of they always, every time I speak to them, they always sort of come up with another sort of key fact, or they'll come up with another sort of differentiation from them to other events businesses that make them stand out from the crowd. And that is definitely something that I always add into my job adverts when I'm recruiting for that particular business. And I think it's really important when you've got a job advert to have, let's say, 4 or 5 bullet points at the top to really engage those candidates. And that's where you want your key facts. So when all of us are on the market, when candidates are on the market, they instantly want to know, right, what's the salary? So pop that on there as one of the top 4 or 5. And then it's the key thing. So if they have events globally and you can go and travel all around the world to these events, brilliant. For some people, that's amazing. You can pop that up there. And it's certain things like that this key client of mine always comes in with to make them differentiate from their competitors. Okay,
so you do that in the adverts. What are sometimes some people doing in the interview process as well to really sell themselves? Well, the selling doesn't stop, does it, at all, throughout the whole recruitment process? There's an ongoing selling piece.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of flipping it, and it's asking the candidate to find that out. So one key question that I sort of advise candidates to ask is, okay, well, you've been at the business X amount of time. Why is it? What have they done to keep you engaged there? Now, I know you said sort of asking what does the company do, but it's really sort of asking, getting the candidate to draw it out of them and how they sell it. Because if you're speaking to a hiring manager that's only been there 2 months, okay, why did you join this business? What was it about it that put them first above everywhere else. Equally, if you've been there 6 years, how are you still there? How are you sort of not losing your mind? And what are they doing that's so engaging? So that you're really hearing it from the horse's mouth rather than just an advert where you're trying to put your best foot forward and so on. You're really seeing it. And I think quite a lot of that job interviews now are on Teams, so you can gauge how truthful what they're saying is as well, in terms of their body language, their facial expressions, their tones and everything like that as well.
Indeed. Okay, so we've covered sell yourself. We've covered about having a quick and a thorough interview process. To wrap this up and to wrap up this episode, what's one more tip you could give me and give the audience that'd help me recruit more effectively? But if I was recruiting for marketing vacancies,
so I'd sort of say try to remove preconceived ideas in terms of who your candidates might be from, for example. So let's take it, I keep going towards it, an events business. More often than not, they want a candidate that has an events background, events industry. That's where they want them from. However, B2B marketing, you can have some transferable skills. I mean, take me, for example. I've never done recruitment in my life, never even thought about it. My background was sales. I can use all of my sort of sales skills to bring it into marketing. And I think that's one thing, is try not to be so closed-minded in terms of this is what we want, nothing more, only send me that. Maybe sort of sway, have a little look if you're not getting the level of candidates that you're looking for at the moment. I mean, there's no harm in opening your eyes to it. You might find a needle in a haystack and hire that person. They could absolutely fly. And it's also, can you say that everybody within your business has, for example, come from events? Highly likely not. You've got to start somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, you have 100%. I'm a firm believer, like you've said in your example, you've got the right personality traits and soft skills to be successful in recruitment. And I guess marketing won't be different than any other industry sector, and there'll be a lot of preconceived ideas when a hiring manager looks at a CV and says, oh, that person hasn't got this, that, or maybe they've moved a couple of times for whatever reason that might be. But that actual person might have the absolute 100% correct attributes to be successful. So it's moving away from the CV almost. And if you think about this, and I guess final question with hiring managers that are more open, ones that you're working with, how are they identifying and assessing transferable skills if they're not on the CV? Like, what are they doing when they meet with people? How are they like working with you in order to see people from outside of their traditional profile events or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so one thing that I tend to ask the hiring managers within the interviews, okay, so the ideal background is from events. If they don't have events, what are the top 3 skills? So it's okay, email marketing, brilliant. Okay, let's get you somebody from email marketing. That way, when I send the profile over, I'll send a blurb and be like, right, hands up, they're not from events, but they've done email marketing for 6 years. They've run this campaign, they've done this, done this. It's just a completely different industry. Now, I'm not saying sort of events that you can learn sort of a click of a finger and it's really easy, because obviously it might not be. It might be challenging if you're coming from tech or vice versa. But fundamentally, the role is going to be about campaigns. So you're literally just picking them up and putting them into a different industry and different pot, and that's what they've got to learn there. So that's one thing that I really try and sort of speak to my hiring managers about when I'm supporting them straight away.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Sophie. That final point in there wraps up the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on. Really enjoyed having you on.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great. Okay, so next week, for everyone tuning in, I'll have my colleague Ed Silipo on, where we'll be discussing the benefits of having an effective sales and marketing function. So we really hope you join us all for that one, and we'll hopefully see you again next week. So that wraps up another episode of the Recruitment Roundup podcast. Thank you very much for listening to the show, to watching the show. We really appreciate your support. It would be absolutely fantastic if you could give us a rating on Apple, on Spotify, give us a review. Any feedback really helps and is massively appreciated. So thank you once again for joining us, and we will hopefully see you again next week.